Mr. Yogeshwar Kumar. But before that, I will give a brief introduction of Mr. Kumar. Mr. Engineer Yogeshwar Kumar is a graduate with BTech in Civil Engineering from IIT Delhi. He founded JANSMARTH to empower villages of India with technological interventions. So he is from the civil society organization. He has extensively worked with villagers in North East and Uttrakhand. He is a strong advocate of using traditional spiritual practices along with traditional agricultural technologies and biodiversity for tackling the problems of climate change and pollution. So I will now request Engineer Yogeshwar Kumar to kindly start your talk. Over to you, Mr. Kumar.
Dhanyavad, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My lecture is based on my experiences working in many villages in India. In fact, I have worked almost in all the states of Himalayan region, right from Meghalaya to Jammu and Kashmir, Uri, Ladakh, and other places. And I'm fortunate for having worked with biologists at the same time. And very interestingly, my first experience was to set up a small power station for a group of biologists working at high altitude region in Uttarakhand Himalayas. And this was a very simple technology that we adopted of water mills by improving the turbine and making available certain material from the second-hand shops. And this is how we assembled our small power station, which is to provide light and electricity to equipments for the scientists working in a high altitude region. I was very fortunate to have worked with them because that also opened my another area of biodiversity and environment. And what we had seen is, we had set up this small power stations, we had large number of villagers coming to us to see the power station and the simple setup we had in such a high altitude. It was a time when it was way back in 1975-76, when there were only 10% villages of India were electrified, and the laws were very difficult at the time because you could not generate and sell electricity. So there were a lot of pressure on us that we will restrict to such a small thing and not go beyond that. And this use of water mills actually gave people a lot of ideas that there are so many water mills, in the Himalayan region. In fact, there was a survey which pointed out that there are almost 100,000 water mills right from Hindu Kush Himalayas to Arunachal Pradesh. And there's such a vast number of water mills. Each is probably capable of generating about 5 kilowatt minimum. And the interesting thing was people have rights of land as well as right over water because they had taken permission from the government, from the forest department and from the revenue department also. So the rights are there till today. And though most of these water mills are defunct, but they can put back into service after a bit of repair. And now with a lot of technology available, we can make into a very interesting small micro hydropower units, which can supply electricity to the village and fulfill a lot of energy requirements of the villages. While working with them, I had sort of become expert in traveling all over, trekking all over the place. I was also given an opportunity after that to survey for a biosphere reserve, which was coming up in Uttarakhand region, because around the time Man and Biosphere program was started by UNESCO. So they were looking for places which should be, protected or reserved, such as biosphere reserves, national parks, and sanctuaries. So I had an opportunity to go all over central and northern Uttarakhand area, and walking in Chamoli district, Pithoragarh district, and Tehri district, also in Almora district, to mark certain areas which could be made into some kind of biosphere reserves, sanctuaries, or national parks. So we finally got Nanda Devi as a biosphere reserve, which later on also was made into a national park. Now it is called Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve and National Park. And also Valley of Flowers was made into a national park. This gave me a very good understanding that there are certain areas in Himalayas, such as subtropical to subtemperate zone, or isolated hills or isolated valleys, which are actually repositories of very good germplasm in the Himalayan region. And some of these zones, like subtropical temperate zones, they have very large number of species of flora and fauna, because when winter sets in, the birds migrate downwards, and during summer, the birds from tropical region, they come up in that area. So if you work out, hello, sir, can you see my image? Hello?
Yes, sir, we can see your image.
Okay. Continue. Because something else is coming on the frame, so I was wondering. Anyways, so this was very enlightening to us, and we had referred this to the Ministry of, it was Department of Environment, is part of Ministry of Forest actually, and actually gradually build up into a large number of biospheres, national parks covering the entire country. And this was a process also which made us realize that there are a large number of sacred groves that exist, all over the country. Actually, there is a tradition among people, rural people, that they will preserve some of the pristine forest areas, which are definitely repository of all this germplasm. But they are also considered, these are the these are the places where the soul go and resides. So they become very religiously very important places, and some of them are highly reserved areas. You can't pick up a twig from that place. These are one type. Then there are other types which are some kind of national parks or biosphere reserves, where you can manipulate something and you have germplasm. You can utilize that germplasm in stocking your areas in the villages, and you can use that germplasm for multiplying into make a nursery and plant them. So these were some very interesting learning for me, and the move this taking this micro hydropower, which was a very interesting subject for the scientists. We started taking it to the people. And the Electricity Act had not changed. We had certainly a lot of difficulties, because people from electricity departments, and they used to come. It is all right if you're doing in a small way. If it becomes big, then we'll have to take action against you. So under these process, anyways, we started doing. And later on, district administration was also quite relaxed. In fact, one of the DC came forward that I have a lot of pipes and generators lying with me. Why don't I will auction it? Why don't you come and buy it, so that you can install some more power station in the villages? So we saw some changes taking place within the government, the thinking, and then finally came a new act in 2003, which allowed the generation and sale of power. Then things become very easier. So in this process of setting up micro hydros, I have done installation of these units right from Uri, meeting Gujars actually in Jammu and Kashmir. Then we had, I had another instances of setting up in Kargil district, in Ladakh district, and a lot of them in Uttarakhand area. Small one starting from 5 kilowatt going to about 40 kilowatt, small power stations. And then in also Kalahandi district in Odisha, with a very unique interaction with the tribal community, while we were installing, and how religious they were about the whole process, and how they'll come and do their pujas, and so that there is a peace, and one is able to set up this power station and people can make use of this power easily. And anyway, these are very big exercises working with people in different areas, and I have very interesting experiences working with the community. Having done so many power stations, when I look back, I find that energy is one very important thing, and people are definitely losing interest in hydropower. The reason is solar energy is becoming very cheap, but the usefulness of micro hydro, for providing you 24/7 power is unmatchable by any other source of power. So we have still some systems running, and the other systems being slightly taken easy because the grid power has reached. So the question came, once grid power comes, what do you do with the small setup that you have with you? In some cases, people have started using that for business purposes, commercial purposes, that grind grains, and you use it for this food processing. You can do carding and many other things with that. You can also use making juices and other things, and there are other whole lot of things, small livelihood opportunities that it can provide with the cheap energy that is available. But the problem has been, it cannot be still as cheap as what you get from the grid power, because grid power is already subsidized electricity that reaches your home. When you set up your own power station, you have a lot of other difficulties. Its costs are higher, its maintenance cost is high, and the preferences started going low for that. And our realization after this is, unless your system is good enough to give you a very good business, people may not take it enthusiastically. Because there are repairs sometimes, and you don't have funds, and you have to fall back on government, going to the district and requesting for some APDA kind of thing. District magistrate is willing to give fund for repair of systems. And then when the earning is not much from this power station, people lose interest. So if our systems are good enough to give you a steady power, and also you're able to utilize this electricity very well, you can use it for running all the equipment, plus you can also connect it to the grid, so you can virtually make income 24/7. And once you are doing work yourself, then it is much more profitable, because if you take your grains for grinding outside, he may charge about 4 rupees per kg, and 50 kgs bag he will do in 200 rupees. Whereas when you do it yourself on your power station, it just take you again 1 hour, but your cost is very small. The power consumption is very small in that. It's just about 5 kilowatt into just 1 hour is about 5 units of power. So that's how you can earn a lot from your own power station if you get a lot of business on this and keep it running for 24/7, or say even at 70% plant capacity. So I still see there's a lot of scope of hydropower, provided we are able to generate very good business out of it. Sir, the other learning from my travels to various areas, particularly in Meghalaya, I saw a sacred grove which is called Maflong sacred grove. I'm sure a lot of people must be aware of it. And then in Garo Hills we have Balfakram Biosphere Reserve. They are very they're not touched. They are very pristine forests. And the more interesting thing is the people living around. They also preserve a lot of germplasm with them, and that germplasm is of, say, paddy and a lot of vegetables and things like that. In fact, going into one of the houses in Garo Hills, I found that one woman had 16 species of paddy with her, and it is according to the aspect in the field, and plus the drought, plus the heavy rainfall, plus say germplasm like very good flavor, and there are certain species which are on species, means they have a spike on top of fruit. So if your village is, if your cultivated area is far away, and you can't have a look at it all the time, there are a lot of animals will come and try and eat the crop. But if it is spiked, then it gets stuck in the throat and animal does not eat it. So it's a very special thing in some of the seed varieties that they're on, and you can grow them in number of places where you does not require attention. Then everybody knows about 60-day rice, which is called sati rice. There are a lot of varieties of sati rice. So like that, it was amazing to find that somebody having 16 varieties of rice. Similarly, when I came to Uttarakhand while working very seriously, I found there also people have about 6 to 7 varieties of rice. Interestingly, these areas are very close to the towns, but yet people have been maintaining so many varieties of rice with them. And since the land is distributed, they have also scattered parcels. They have a lot of difficulty in looking after the fields, and the on varieties do extremely good work. And similarly, the satis, which is almost a dryland crop, is also very useful for preserving the crop in that area. So, with this learning that people are very conscious of germplasm, which they may need anytime. It's a it's a it's a it's a it's a very important position that one has. And I have seen in my later projects when I worked with IUCN in one of the projects where it was coping with uncertainties, how to build community resilience, and using the ecosystem. Here, the preserved ecosystem germplasm was used, for improving the landscape of the area, and so much of germplasm that was actually used in the fields of people, as some of the people were having a lot of cows and they were selling milk. There was a shortage of fodder, and there was not enough land with them to grow fodder separately. So there's some tree species were very, very useful. And while working with the government, forest officers were also encouraged that in such protected forest, one can find very good germplasm available, and you can collect these seeds and make a nursery and use them in your fields. And we found a very good response to that, and with people's collaboration, nurseries were set up, so we could have very good plants which could be planted around their fields, so that they have fodder available with them, and the milk production could increase. And there was another thing that a place called Mandal near Gopeshwar is very well known for Tej Path, which we use as in culinary, and it has a very good ingredients in it, and one could even raise a nursery of Tej Path in the villages. Similarly, Amla, which was people have given up, Amlas was brought back into the nursery, and also Rita, soap nut, which people were using till say about 20 years ago. They gave up after the detergents came, but now they realize there is a big demand of Rita all over the world, as people are giving up detergents and they want something else to come, and Rita is most preferable. India in fact exports a lot of amount of Rita to foreign countries. So what we find is there are a lot of values which are lost, and with the diminishing soil health, as a lot of fertilizers invaded, and they realized that the crop production actually is not doing very well after a few years. and they are unable to grow all of the other crops. So they wanted to go back into the organic farming. So the whole old cycle has now started coming back of using organic farming, at least in the fields of small and marginal farmers. And of course, there can be a lot of inputs of science and technology in it that people have some difficulties with the pesticides, organic pesticides, because you need a specific type of pesticide for a specific pest. So, though there are about 500 odd pesticides one can find organic pesticide, but still people are not convinced, and they still want some more work to be carried on for innovating new pesticides for controlling pests in the field. Uh, Lastly, I would like to make a brief mention that I have worked very hard in state of Sikkim and Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh. I see a very big changes taking place in these areas. Uttarakhand does not have much per capita land, so their youngsters are being pushed out by their parents. That you have no livelihood here, then you go out, look for livelihood, and probably they can't take care of their grown-up children. So this is a very serious problem that a lot of these people, boys, they migrate out from their land and they come to places like this. And when we seen this pandemic, they were really in trouble. And how to go back now? Place we left, looking for livelihood in Delhi, and now we have to go back and somehow adjust. Somehow things are going on, but over a period of time, we'll see soon we'll realize that people are on their way out. They have no other option available with them. They can improve their field a little bit, but will not. We can do it to some extent, not beyond that. Actually, in these areas,
Sorry,
especially.
sorry sorry to interrupt you, sir. 5 minutes left for.
Okay, okay. Uttarakhand has old people looking after the fields, and once this generation goes, there is hardly anybody to look after agriculture. This is very serious problem, especially in the state of Uttarakhand. Now, should they switch over to agroforestry or horticulture? Now, the big decisions are to be taken, and something has to be started in this area, to keep on making use of the land that is available with them. In Himachal Pradesh, you find in the upper reaches, there is a horticulture activity in almost all over the place. But the climate change is giving a very tough time. As for instance, apple, which used to grow in Kullu, now it has started going to upper reaches. Now it does not grow in Kullu anymore. It goes to Manali, and it's even beyond, going to Lahaul and Spiti. So crops are marching up, above and above due to climate change. So people have to keep on chasing and come out with some new solutions, and also face a lot of problems because they are unable to find appropriate solution at some given time. And the public today also demands that they want organic foods rather than, being laced with fertilizers, pesticides, and all that. So that is also a big challenge for them. There is another challenge that a lot of fruit falls and they are unable to utilize. Fresh fruit that falls can be immediately picked up and used for processing. So lack of processing industries again are creating serious problem. Their lack of cold storage is another thing that is needs to be worked out. In fact, in one of our projects, we have a small power station which is gearing up for processing of food. At least they can make pulp out of it and use it for making jams and other things. And in Sikkim, we have de facto organic, and the state is also an organic state. It has somehow kept its people there. The youngsters are not moving out because they say it is a lot of work. The Sikkim state itself needs a lot of vegetables and other things. Right now, a lot of it comes from Jalpaiguri and all that, and they just don't want to have these vegetables coming out which are laced with organic, no, with chemicals and pesticides. So, sir, I lastly, I'll just take 1 minute. I have some very important observation in the whole process, that we have been doing a lot of projects, independently in a scattered area. We do it, and once we leave, we are not sure about the sustainability of such projects. In my last projects, I had opportunity to involve the block headquarters into this, and calling it kind of a convergence, and it has led to some positive results. A lot of NGOs, they work in isolation with a lot of ideas. They have many good things to talk, but somehow it has to go to this entire country with so many blocks, with so many villages and blocks. We need to cover the whole country. See, for instance, one block has about 90 villages on average and about 40 panchayats. So if we have a convergence at block level, and state government also provides some kind of convergence, and we are able to take some new technology, some new ideas, whatever good ecology and ideas and ecology, a lot of things can change, and it can be a very good step forward. I would suggest, after so much of my experience, that it is not very good to work in isolation, and more we go and start converging with the government, the better it is. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Kumar. That was a very comprehensive overview of all the grassroots activities that you are doing. Amazing, you worked on water mills, then micro hydro station, grid power, bringing a challenge, and the change of the attitudes of the youngsters, less interest in agricultural activity and migration, and eventually you bring out the challenge of phasing out, and sustainability is an issue, whether you can work in isolation or not. So that's also a big, of course, in this time we are all connected, so we need to work and leverage the expertise and the resources of other agencies. So that's wonderful. Thanks very much for bringing out these grassroots level experiences, and hats off to you to have taken these challenges and in working in such a vast area from Uttarakhand to Sikkim. So thank you very much.